This is Robert Martellacci, the MindShare Learning Report, Canada's Learning and Technology e-magazine. And welcome to this week in Canadian EdTech MindShareTV. Very special fortuitous edition here, as I have special guest visitors here at the MindShare Workspace. Sunil Singh, who is the international keynote speaker, former Toronto District School Board, fellow alumni, STEAM educator, author, and you can catch him at Math Garden on Twitter, and Luke Goudreault, who is the partner and CGO at Vireo, who just recently won our Canadian EdTech Startup Challenge. We've been at FETC, we've been at ERDI, and now he follows me again here to the MindShare Workspace. I'm not sure what to make of it, but I do know I've seen more of you than my wife in recent weeks. Thank you for joining me today. And
on Valentine's Day.
On Valentine's Day.
Exactly.
Now she's really going to question that. And thank you for bringing along Sunil Singh, who we follow each other on LinkedIn and Twitter, but this is our first time in person, so quite an honor to have both of you here today.
Thanks, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
So talk to me about the inspiration of Vireo and the success you've had of late at FETC in partnership with the Canadian government as guests at ERDI to a pitch panel there. What's the feedback been like, and what's the inspiration for you?
So since the summit, Canadian EdTech Summit, that we won the Startup Challenge, I think there was a buzz around what we do actually. And for the one that don't know, what we do is that we actually take agricultural spaces and we transform them into project-based learning opportunities for kids to do, of course, curriculum aligned activities, but as a first step toward a greener and a more sustainable future. So I think right now, post-pandemic, there is we've seen that was a catalyst moment, and I think that not just students but also teachers need to have some project to feel mobilized, to work together with the students and give back to community. So basically, we're trying to place this project in the middle of the community. That's not an easy task. It's not something that is commonly done, but this is something we're trying to build slowly.
Well, I'm fascinated by your work and based out of Quebec City. I can't wait to come and visit and attend the EdQuops conference. And we're planning a EdTech retreat with leaders, which will be fascinating on some island off Quebec City that I didn't know existed. So
it's
local knowledge here, but I'm fascinated by the fact that you've infused the Sustainable Development Goals as part of the curriculum, and we're incidentally launching at the start of March the 14th Canadian Schools of the Future Student Invention Challenge to really challenge kids to hone their skills and demonstrate their digital skills. Incidentally, one of the reports I shared this morning highlighted a study that was done recently that Gen Z kids feel that school is not meeting their needs.
Yeah.
And now over to our resident author and speaker and math extraordinaire, Sunil. It's such an honor to meet you. I've heard so much about you. You are, like comedians, actors, and singers. They tend to go to the U.S. to get recognized, and then they come back home. So you've taken a page out of which one of those, or all three?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Robert. It actually feels like my fifth podcast. We just decided to do this, 20 minutes ago.
Yes.
But like I said, this sort of fortuitous sort of meeting and doing this podcast, and so for one of the things that I'm doing, and where I think we all should be doing as educators, is rethinking what are we doing now in 2023. We should always be having this internal reflection so that we can best serve our students with the freshest ideas. So for me, there's three things which I think I value the most, and this is where speaking as a mathematician, the Venn diagram intersects with these three circles. One, I'm interested in the absolute highest quality of mathematics. Right now, we got three layers. We got content, pedagogy, technology. Content's been around for thousands of years. good pedagogy 20, good technology about 5 to 7. So it's always got to be content driven. Pedagogy supports that, and then technology supports that.
Right.
And after that is then after you have this high quality mathematics, what's the highest universal purpose for all students? I know we have all different kind of careers and objectives, but is there, and I'm not saying I've answered it, but
Mhm.
is there a higher universal purpose regardless of student background or situation
Right.
or goal? And then maybe I've answered it, this sort of, is that the third thing I'm interested in is delivering all this, the high quality mathematics, the higher purpose to our most marginalized and forgotten students. Those three things have to
Mhm.
be there. And so just to keep sort of talking a bit, something which has happened recently, I'm very excited about, is I'll be giving a keynote in San Jose at a math summit. And I mean, that's exciting working with teachers, but the Silicon Valley Education Foundation invited me to spend at least half a day at a local correctional facility working with students.
Amazing.
So
Interesting.
now it's like you walk the walk.
Right.
Like you're going to go in
Yes.
with these kids who don't want to see you,
Right.
who probably go, what is a math person doing here in my life? So it's a challenge for me. How do you build trust, right? So I'm starting back at ground zero. These are kids who I do not know, have no reason to, do anything with me. So that for me is a challenge because every little bit I can extract from students will be organic. And so, yeah, I'm very
I
excited.
can't wait to have that podcast
Oh, that one?
post
Yeah,
speaking
amazing.
down in San Jose.
yeah.
You hit on struck a couple of chords.
Thank you.
No pun intended, because
No,
you're
it's-
also into music as well.
I'm very much into music, and yes, I'm almost finished my fourth book, my first music book. So any kind of metaphor you want to use,
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable in.
Well, fantastic. And let's talk about the inspiration behind your books. So you were a math teacher. You enjoyed that career, I presume.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a very interesting question because even though it would seem like a common question, it's never been really asked. Like, what inspired you? And the
Yeah.
answer is going to surprise people.
Yeah.
Is that I never had a goal to write books. Other people encouraged me, hey, Sunil,
Mhm.
you should write. You should write a book. You should write a second book. Only the third book, my math book, did I feel like, okay, you know what? I want to write one more final book. And it was called Chasing Rabbits, A Curious Guide to a Lifetime of Mathematical Wellness. I started the book pre-pandemic.
Wow.
And then the pandemic became the muse. Because if you're going to walk the walk and talk about wellness, here you have a generational pandemic where there's a lot of mental health issues, and math has
Absolutely.
always had a huge sort of phobia, anxiety, and trauma associated with it. So my writing took even more elevated status for at least me. Like, what can I communicate this to teachers who can hopefully communicate this to students? So I feel like I have nothing more to offer the math world in terms of writing,
Right.
but I still obviously want to speak about it and have these kind of discussions.
Brilliant. And now I understand that you're going a bit of a different direction at
Yes.
TSN Turning Point. And the
Yes.
next book is going to be around music.
It is completely about music. It's called Sonic Seducer, Lust for Life with our transcending moments and memories and magic of rock and roll. And again, that was like, I'm writing it for me. There wasn't any sort of like, okay, I'm sure this big book is going to be big. But as my other books, we always talk about financial investment. I have 2 kids who are in high school. My books are emotional investments, so they'll remember their father with permanence. So even though those
Nice.
conversations might not happen, all of them are recorded, and they'll go, "Yeah, that was my dad. That's how." They'll have more maturity to undertake it. But this music book is a passion of mine because, I mean, the way I told my daughter the other day,
Yeah.
if I didn't have math, okay, I might lose my job. But if you took music away, that's taking away my life. So music has always been my first
Right.
lifeblood. I think it's the most
Fascinating.
universal thing for everybody. So I think that's why I think this book is going to be more accessible.
Well, when I think back to growing up and some of those defining moments through our lives, whether graduating from grade 1 or winning a hockey championship, music always played a part is part of that memory. And, Yellow Brick Road when I was graduating from grade 8 in middle school, the theme song was
Yeah.
the Elton John's Yellow Brick Road,
And I mean,
right?
I think I don't
How long did that take me to remember? Like, so I haven't lost it yet.
I love it.
well, it's and I forget who said it, but it's like an automatic time machine, right?
Right.
And sometimes we're gonna have more vivid memories between the song, everything, but our childhood is this sacred place that we can always visit, and the more color that's added to it, sometimes with food tastes or sounds. One of the things I mentioned in the book, and you'll probably know this, is there was a local radio station called CKY.
Yes, I
Right?
remember it well.
Remember CKY, right?
Yeah.
So I remember my dad sitting at this round table, eating his hard-boiled egg and brown toast, and I remember the music used to come on after the news. So it was Glenn Campbell, Rhinestone Cowboy.
Are you kidding me? Did he just make this up? Because that's my song.
Yeah,
seriously?
no,
I just
No.
I just sang it
Did you?
down in
Okay.
Palm Springs.
I know.
You put him up to that.
no,
No,
he doesn't know this.
I
It's
didn't
so
know
weird.
He doesn't know this.
Wow.
I've
But-
been walking these streets
Yeah,
so
there
long.
There we go. Pop-up karaoke.
Sing
now.
it,
Singing
piano,
the same
Pop-
old
pop-up
song.
karaoke. There you go.
I know every crack in
I
these
wasn't
dirty
expecting
sidewalks
this.
of Broadway.
It's amazing.
Just let him
That's
go.
it.
Just let him go.
No,
nice,
I'm
nice
done.
voice. Nice
I'm
voice,
done.
Robert.
But speaking of longevity and music, I'm a little overdressed here today because it was just at the state funeral for our previous mayor, Hazel McCallion. And it was such an honor to be part of it. Everyone from the prime minister to the premier and our city mayor, Bonnie Crombie, were there speaking. And Hazel was about community. She was about doing your homework. The first thing her friend said when he stood up on stage to kick things off was do your homework. That was Hazel's number one tagline. And as mayor. And I remember, Professor Bryce Taylor in our Sport Admin program at York saying, you've always got to do your homework no matter whether you're in school or not. Be prepared.
Be prepared. Yeah.
Preparation, right, has always been a big thing in what we do. And our former mayor Hazel, legendary, and left such a legacy in Mississauga, across Canada and beyond, because of her passion for helping people, live a good life. She was the mayor of the people, and she was always about community engagement,
Creating that sense of belonging, right? That's what we're trying to do
belonging,
in schools.
and there's a lot of relatability when it comes to schools and writing your books.
Well, I mean, I'm just going to, because Luke just said something, and it's a great quote. Unfortunately, I don't know the person who said this, but not all students come to school wanting to learn, but all students come to school wanting to belong.
Yeah.
And you can
Absolutely.
only learn when you belong.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, we're hearing about problems at school, in terms of bullying, and there's violence, and there's a whole bunch of issues which have always been there. But what I've found, the schools in which there's the minimum amount of that is because there's always caring teachers.
100%.
That's-
And what's interesting, and one of the other outcomes of the ERDI event was superintendents talked about the importance of relationships. And
They did, huh?
the relationships,
Wow.
yeah. And what's interesting is Harvard came out with a report recently, looking at longevity and part of a health tech longevity company startup. And so I've been reading a lot about this. And it's not nutrition, it's not exercise that is the number one thing that will help you lead a longer life. It's positive relationships.
Was that the Harvard study?
Yes.
Yeah. So they did this 80-year. It was an 80-year study, and
85
it just
study,
it just came
Yeah.
out like a couple weeks ago, right?
That's right.
And I wouldn't have guessed at that result, but I wasn't surprised by it. Because when you do the audit, you do your own audit, you do your audit of your kids or your friends, and you realize you're the ones who are the happiest have positive relationships,
Right.
family, friends.
And it's not about money. It's,
No.
you know, having the money helps, don't get me wrong, but positive relationships are number one. And that was our mayor. You know, if I could define Hazel McCallion, she challenged everyone and told you what she thought. She didn't sugarcoat things,
No.
but always focused on forward thinking, visionary, you know, from farmland to one of the top cities in North America. And she was the, you know, longest standing mayor. So there's a lot to unpack there, but and relatable to education, and coming back full circle to what education is all about. What are we preparing our kids for?
And I think one of the things we talked off air before the podcast was students feel like that they're not being listened to in a genuine way. Like not so much, okay, like things which are academic related, but really what they're going through. And we always say, you know, education is for students. Well, the currency that went up even higher now through the pandemic and still coming out of it. So what do we really mean by listening to students and being prepared? For me, being prepared means two things. One, to obviously work in society, to be part of society, to be part of a helpful society. So right now, education tends to be more competitive, very individualistic. But we should have an education system that's built in terms of like kindness and grace so that we create better communities. And the other thing about education, which I think has always been neglected, is the internal vector. Like, what's my purpose here? What's my purpose in learning? And so I think all those things are happening now.
It's a fascinating time.
It is a very
And with the democratization of learning
Exactly.
and the tools and ChatGPT that's
Yes.
gotten a lot of rave reviews. And, you know, I actually typed in how can ChatGPT be used in education in a positive way? And you can create lesson plans, you can solar system, grade 4, infuse equity and inclusion, and it will provide you the entire lesson with the rubric, with assessments. And it's really about, we create the technology, Marsh McLuhan. We create the technology, and the technology shapes us. So, and he also coined the phrase, Dr. McLuhan, notable U of T professor, the medium is the message. So teachers need to understand the medium is the message to get their point across. Really deeply understand what that means.
And I think
To engage kids in a positive way.
so you said engage, and I'm curious as to what the field metaphorically is for
Yeah.
engagement. And what do I mean by that is that we still have a generation of, generally speaking, analog teachers teaching digital teens.
Right.
So when you and I went to school, teachers and students listen to different music, but they use the same sort of format, which was vinyl or cassette or, you know, what was the other one?
CD.
No, before
A-track.
CD. A-track.
Ah, yes.
Look at that. Yes, I never owned an 8-track, but 8-track, right?
I'm dating myself.
Oh no, I'm dating myself.
But listen, I have the growth mindset embedded in me. Thanks to a teacher, Mrs. Fogarty. She was an English teacher at George Harvey, wrote in my yearbook, "The only sign of life is growth," and drew a little flower. I kept reading that over. I read all the comments in my yearbook from all the girls that I dated. And then they went back to that, and I was like, I'm just kidding about all the girls. There weren't many. But
when did she write that?
In grade 12. And that instilled the growth mindset in me. Words are powerful.
Yes.
Words are powerful.
I got a quote. So there's a book that was written in 1970 called Future Shock. And
Yeah, I remember that.
remember Future
Yeah, I
Shock?
did.
Yeah, I didn't read it till university.
Yeah.
But there's a really good line quote in it where Alvin Toffler, the author, goes,
Yes.
the illiterate of the future will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot unlearn, learn, and relearn.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
good, yeah. I remember.
Wow,
that.
that's heavy now.
See?
I think this brings it to a close
No.
after
Yeah.
all that conversation. I'm gonna have to reread that a few times,
Well,
but
maybe you should go back to Glenn Campbell, Rhinestone
Yeah.
Campbell, just to get us out of here.
that is too ironic. I can't believe that I was at the Glenn Campbell Museum this summer in Nashville. I'm
Wow.
okay. It goes back again to the Gong Show days in high school. We did the Gong Show, and my whole friend group, I was the lead
We're
singer.
dating ourselves now with the Gong Show.
Yes. No, you probably were in grade 5, but it was momentous, and that's I want to be in your book because that song has stayed with me to this day, and I still sing it at birthday parties, bar mitzvahs, and weddings
Okay.
and conferences.
No, but
At conferences,
no,
yes.
I think there's an automatically emerging point because I mentioned that song in the book. Because the story I
That-
told is
that
in the
is
book.
so weird. That I'm in.
You're in. He's in.
Well, with that, gentlemen, thank you so much for
Thanks for inviting.
for
Yes.
visiting us all the way from Quebec City,
All the way from Pickering.
Pickering, Ontario, where I played junior hockey
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah, the Panthers.
That was Sunil Singh, keynote speaker, former TDSB STEAM educator, author at Math Garden on Twitter, and at Luke Goudreault, partner and CGO. What's CGO?
Chief Growth
Oh, yeah.
Officer.
Okay,
Yeah.
I had to ask that. At Vireo, Canada's startup challenge winner at the EdTech Summit. My name is Robert Martelacci, the MindShare Learning Report. Be sure to check out www.MindShare Learning to get your latest issue. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.